Alright, this is going to be my commentary on the rogue-like Loop Hero experience. Basically, I've set myself to complete the whole game without any town upgrades. No town upgrades means, of course, no access to traits or levels, means very limited access to healing, as I have no potions and my campfire only heals me for 20%. You can think of it as an extension of the game's own achievement in Time for Lunch, but this time we are taking it some steps further, to Act 2 and so on and so forth. I did not, of course, intend to complete Act 2 on my second run, Act 3 on my third run. It would be pretty much impossible, as it is very luck dependent. However, I did not make any town upgrades in between my attempts. In the end, Acts 2 and 3 turned out to be pretty trivial. You can actually complete them this way within a day or so of dedicated attempts. Act 4, however, was very challenging. And I despaired, but in the end I've overcome. You can see the deck I used on the screen. I'll dwell on it later, and now let us transition to the run itself. The best card in the deck, and in the entire game, is of course the Vampire's Mansion, and I happened to get one immediately. I place it over a cluster of enemies. Vampires really help to stall the early fights, and more days pass, that means more slimes spawned. That transitions to more cards and better stats, and overall more glory to me. Speaking about stalling, I use a well-known trick. I do not equip any offensive stats for as long as I can. The second trick I use is shuffle manipulation. Believe it or not, there is an actual deck, and it contains only 3 copies of the Vampire's Mansion in it. And whenever I don't get one as a drop, the probability to get the mansion increases. So you see, like in this fight right here, I get one, finally. And then after that, I immediately use up all my hand. And that causes a deck shuffle and restores the probability to the default value. An easy rule of thumb is to never spend your hand until you get the card you want, and then spend it all immediately once you get it. I use it in the early game to get as many Vampire's Mansions as I can. I could use it in the late game to get as many battlefields, because overlapping battlefields generate more tiles, like a lot of tiles per card played, because of bloodbaths. Battlefield is a multi-purpose card for the sake of this challenge. Chests can give a lot of loot, and the run is very gear dependent. And of course there are the ever lovable ghosts that can only drop cards, and they drop a lot of cards. Here I get my first ghost in the first possible fight, and immediately it's ghost number 2, ghost squared, and you see me glossing over my health bar, and finally I give in and I equip some offensive stats, because from experience I know that Ghost of a Ghost can really mow down my health with all its counterattacks. The treasury serves a similar role. Immediately upon emptying, it gives you 2 cards and 2 items, and then it starts spawning gargoyles at a decent rate. And gargoyles give really high level loot, and you will see the benefit of it later. Myself, I am the greatest treasury advocate, and as I would say, the card pays for itself. Now we are going to pass the first cemetery that I placed a bit earlier, and I know I might start sounding a bit like a broken record, but I need high level loot. It's the only way I can survive in this extreme challenge. And skeletons are my main source of this high level loot. As much as I would like to place the cemetery closer to the beginning of the new loop, cemeteries are slow spawners and I give them more time by placing them around the middle of the loop. And also I enhance the spawn by placing chrono crystals. At the same time, putting chrono crystals over the groves or spider webs is what I actively avoid at this stage. Here's a nice little play. I know that the next fight is going to contain a watcher, so I equip a sword and I kill one and get some nice loot for my trouble. And immediately after that is the first potential misplay of the run. You see, I could have fought this gargoyle in the last fight, but I blew it and missed the chance to showcase another trick this early. Anyway, with this, the first loop is already over. I have 35 tiles placed right now. 2 more and the lich will spawn. Also, my hand is 11 cards out of 13 possible, so pretty much I'm on the best possible pace. Almost the best possible pace. The lich gives us additional 12 tiles, but fear not, I aim of course to skip the first boss. Summoning and fighting lich at the end of loop 1 is also possible, but I do not recommend it, because he is going to have loop 2 stats, so twice as strong, and you are unlikely to have a full set of loop 2 gear at this point. So, the start of a new loop. This is where I like to place some groves and fight some red wolves. Red wolves give quite a bit of cards, they somewhat rarely give loot, and this loot is going to be high level and low quality, which is pretty good. Sometimes it's the best option there is. I place them only at the beginning of the loop, because I actually don't want a lot of them to spawn. You see, in Act 4, the red wolves have some really cursed traits. They are not affected by damage to all, and you cannot deal more than 30% of their HP in one hit. Fighting 4 red wolves in the same encounter is almost always a death sentence. I would also like my early fights to be entirely unassisted by either vampires or watchers. So I hesitated quite a bit before putting the Vampire's Mansion this early in the loop. But it is what it is. You've got to make the best of the loop you are dealt. A simple example. I want almost the entirety of the loop to be covered with Vampire Aura and Temporal Beacon Aura. But as for the regular beacon, I only wanted to cover the boss tile, the Campfire. You see, in this strategy the beacon card is just that, boss trouble helper. Bosses are not affected by aura effects. They do not get the 20% increased attack speed, but the hero still does. In this loop I had no good placement for the beacon. I had to put it over 4 additional tiles, which is not optimal. Oh, nice! The lich is skipped already. You need 83 tiles to do that. Next we are going to fight some goblins. The deck does not have an Oblivion, that would be counterproductive, but the little goblin himself dropped the ultimate solution. Such a nice ring, almost the best in slot for the second loop. Damage to all is mandatory, otherwise I'm going to get eaten alive by either goblins or spiders. I would estimate that you need about 5 or 7 damage to all to confidently pass the second loop. And as for the healing stats, regen per second is clearly superior at this point of the run. Now, where was I? Indeed. There are some really clunky loops that won't even let you place a beacon over the campfire, and of course this should be rerolled instantly. But if you try this sort of challenge, you might notice that you get the best high roll starts on some really clunky loops, and it's not a coincidence. You see, the curved shape is best for placing vampires, but is really the worst for placing beacons. There are no perfect loops, and we make do. Here comes the moment of truth. Will our investment in the skeletons pay off? I'm looking for damage to all, for regen per second. Obviously, I want a high level shield for good defense, and I want high overall damage, so getting a high level weapon helps. I wait a bit to get some extra healing, but after that, there I have it, a full set of level 3 gear. I believe that I said that I want my enemies clustered for more vampire encounters, and this is what the spiders are for, to improve these clusters, to give me additional vampire fights. Usually I place them in such a way that I'll get to this tile just in one day, and I'll only have one little spider in my new vampire fight. But they are a double-edged sword, because once I return for the next loop, there are already 4 little spiders waiting for me. The trick that I failed to show earlier is that by tabbing out at the correct time, you can sneak in some early gargoyle fights, because they travel to their destination while you are standing still. Here, it turned out to be of no consequence, but I'm doing my due diligence. Now, back to spiders. I do put some cocoons well in advance, when there are 2 or 3 tiles available for the spider spawn, so they don't concentrate too much on just one tile. I do not use chrono crystals to boost the spawn rate of anything but the skeletons. I actually use them more to boost the hidden factor of the meadows, which is very significant. You see, I've gotten quite a bit of HP, so finally I am making a big mountain. I waited a long time to do that, because I don't like harpies. Harpies are dangerous. But I absolutely cannot risk on losing HP gain due to hitting my maximum HP. The funny thing is that I'm going to hit the HP ceiling soon anyway, and in fact I'm going to waste about 124 points of life. In light of that, these 4 rock tiles and 1 mountain tile in the top right corner are probably a misplay, as well as some rock tiles I'm going to put next to a treasury in the bottom center. Putting them in the mountain cluster on the left would have saved most, if not all, of that wasted HP. What can I say in my defense? I did not expect to regen that much, with a measly 1.8 regen per sec. In my craziest starts, I've had 3.0 regen at loop 1 and 5.4 regen at loop 2, or maybe even 6.0 regen at loop 2. But these crazy runs were cut short, because apparently I did not build enough damage to all or enough damage. Remember guys, offense is the best defense, and great damage actually mitigates a lot of damage you can receive. Anyway, here the loop itself is not great for building maximum HP. It is wide, it leaves only 4 free columns, and even that is going to be cut into by meadows. However, you should plan your mountain placement in advance and start putting them where you can get them in the biggest block. By the way, the scary priestess is gone, just like that. You need 140 tiles to summon Hunter in Act 4, and by the end of this loop I'm going to have 155 and additional 8 cards in my hand. That means that I've gained more than 100 cards in the second loop. This is fantastic pace, and obviously I'm going to summon the last boss in the next loop, the third one, and I don't really need additional fights. That's why I stopped placing groves, cemeteries, and spider cocoons. If a maze of memories dropped by this point, and if I popped the last remaining treasury, I would have had just enough tiles to summon the last boss on the second loop. The final comments on my building strategy are the following. I tried to place chrono crystals and meadows in such a way that each chrono covers 4 individual meadows, and the meadows are of course upgraded. Such a block gives 24 HP per day, and this is roughly equivalent to 1 health per second of regen. By this point I am getting about 8 HP per second of regen from meadows, and all my healing stats combined give me slightly above 10. The numbers to beat are 6 on the second loop and 10 on the third loop. So at the start of the next loop I'm going to be about even. The fourth trick is to come into boss battles at a combat speed of 2.5x, because bosses have lengthy spawn animations that take a set number of frames. And because of that, at higher combat speeds, more in-game time passes, and you get more regen and also more day progression. I equipped a pure damage ring that I found earlier in the loop, because frankly speaking all the bosses in the game are damage sponges, and additional damage is always a great way to fight them. Now I can 5 to 6 shot the hounds and they don't go into astral plane for the second time. And look, I'm hitting harder than the hunter himself. So, like, who's the boss now? And a nice drop from the hunter, a bonus to damage and regen. I equip it immediately. Also, since I have enough damage, I'm going to swap in the damage to all plus vampirism ring. There are some scary fights up ahead, like this one, vampire plus 4 goblins. Also, on the previous loop I have had fantastic RNG with the grove spawns. All the red wolves went to their separate tiles. But now I'm going to pay. Now there is this crazy fight. 4 red wolves plus a vampire. Actually, the hunter just before was the toughest fight of the entire run, but this fight is the third toughest. Yeah, it is on par with the boss fight. You see how my HP absolutely tanked. But at least I get some nice consolation prizes. Like this ring, the regen ring. And this sword is also not too bad. Actually, my itemization at this point is really far from perfect. You see, loop 3 is when vampirism the stat finally catches up in efficiency to regen per second. And frankly speaking, vampirism almost always feels better. So, the best in slot stats would be something like 4, 8, 0.6. That means 4 damage to all, 8% vampirism, 0.6 regen. Other great items are 410, 213, and all of these are really hard to come by. I could see something like 4 damage to all, 1.8 regen also being good. Wow, a nail biter. I am on edge at this point, because I've been running for a really long time and this run looks really promising. Finally, I can start putting groves and spider cocoons, because actually I'm not going to return to these tiles. I don't care what happens to them. No good loot is dropping in terms of survivability, even though this shield might come in handy for the final boss fight. My decision-making speed also slowed down to a crawl. By this point you might have noticed that this video is very heavily edited. I'll explain. This challenge is a bit like fishing. Never fished a day in my life though. There were hours upon hours of nothing happening, of waiting, of just straight up rerolls of loops. So, whenever I got a good run going, I had to be laser focused. I had to double check every placement. So, the video being edited does not mean cheating. I'm not like that, I'm not that kind of a person, you have to take my word for it. So, yeah, no save scamming, no nothing like that. I've just edited out about 1 hour of indecision, because I have the original footage and it's 1 hour 35 minutes long. I'm still conscious about some of the tile placements, because I really don't want a goblin camp to spawn in one of the openings of the roadside that are still left. The fifth little trick is this one. I keep a low level armor, I equip it, get a heal with it, and then swap back for a good level appropriate armor. It works like that. If you put a rock or a mountain, only your maximum HP increases. But when you switch an armor, both your current and your maximum HP changes, and your percentage of HP stays the same. Because of this, it can be really beneficial to not equip a high level armor when you are regenerating, like say at the second loop, and only equip it once you have a full HP bar. I've closed the roadside opening, so I can finally put down rocks and mountains without a care in the world. Also, by this point, I have passed the hardest fights, and I'm pretty certain that I'm going to see the final boss for the first time doing this challenge. I've got a damage to all armor and level 4 damage to all shield. They are okay, because neither of them has gotten the best damage to all roll. This is of course an extreme challenge video, but I think it can work as a soft guide for how to complete the game without grinding on a low amount of resources. By now I'm pretty certain that this is the way to play the warrior. You should rush loop progression and enjoy high impact of your region and your meadows. Of course, potions and levels should be added, and campfire heal should be increased. That would make things much easier. As for the deck, I think I would only swap out groves and put in villages. It is the card that I'm really missing. And it helps greatly with snowballing at early loops. That's because, much like the Vampire's Mansion, the village's effect is instant. You don't have to wait in-game days for the ghouls to spawn. You just have to place the village next to the Vampire's Mansion. As for the golden card, I think it's a choice between a Maze of Memories and an Arsenal. The Maze can allow to skip bosses and also just to fight the final boss a loop earlier. The Arsenal is crazy strong, especially on the loop you get at first, but you have to be mindful of certain things. First, you don't lifesteal of the return damage. Also, there is a 15% penalty to all the other stats, and for the percentage-based stats, like vampirism, this penalty is somehow 30%. So the efficiency of vampirism is reduced greatly, and you have to combine your arsenal with regen per second. I'm about to summon the final boss. I don't have it in my heart to butcher the portal theme, so now let us just bask in the glory of the Star Judgment. Oops! I guess you've seen my original unedited decision-making speed. Teehee! Anyway, back to the possible enhancements to the strategy. Back to golden cards. Back to the arsenal. It will of course decrease the damage of your weapons by 15%, so with the arsenal you are going to have a harder time against high defense enemies. And bosses frequently have high defense. The arsenal is a game changer. Retaliation damage works as a pseudo damage to all, so with it you don't have to pursue this stat that much anymore. Also, as I've said before, vampirism becomes lackluster, so I would build regen per second and defense. With Arsenal, you are no longer afraid of the Red Wolves, because they are going to destroy themselves against your mighty spikes. Zero Milestone notoriously does nothing in this patch. But you might ask, what about the Ancestral Crypt? Let me lay down some math. From all sources of healing during the entirety of this run, I have received 8.6k of life points, and Meadows are responsible for 4.8k of that. What's an extra life compared to that? At best, it's about 1000 health points. Of course it is strong, but it is not as important as getting good RNG with item drops and card generation. What traits would I go for if I had access to them? Of course, the Article of Protection is the best one, it's an insta-pick. Survivalist and Access Tilt complement our healing strategy greatly, and Blissful Ignorance should be thought of as one-time full heal. Also, the combination of Bottomless Bottle and Strong Aftertaste is good on any warrior build. Back to the run. So far, only some decent damage gear has dropped. There was a lot of inventory management, as I've had to plan out several different sets of items for the final boss fight. No good survivability gear dropped, none but this little gem of an armor. I should have equipped it immediately. The costs would be 33 HP lost and 1 stack of damage to all lost. That would be 1.8 damage. Those 4s and 5s are rounded up and rounded down respectively, so they are quite misleading. I think I would still have enough damage to all. What tricked me was the low level of the armor, but ultimately the net gain of equipping it towards the end of the run would be between 100 and 150 HP. Also, I've lost about 70 HP due to not knowing that fight end animations work the same as boss spawn animations, and you always have to finish your fights at 2.5x combat speed if you are doing a region-focused build. I've only learned that just now, while analyzing the footage for this run. I believe I'm starting to run out of the talking points, so I'll take this time to shout out Kenshin, who had the same idea but chose a really different method of execution. I'll put a link to his channel in the description of the video, and I believe he is going to drop his video pretty soon. Now let us talk bosses. All the bosses in the game hit like a truck, and you can't really out-heal their damage. So your best bet is to make fights as short as possible. Once again, offense is the best defense. The first one is the Lich. There is an obvious piece of advice to not let him spawn many Lich's palaces, but 2 or 3 should be okay, and sometimes up to 5 is manageable depending on your gear. For the gear, I would focus on pure damage, with the side of evasion. And if you fight the Lich at the beginning of loop 3, you are going to need from 300 to 500 HP. The Priestess really is the scariest one for this build, because we do not have access to forest. If you want to fight her, you should really stack damage to all, because about half of your damage is going to come from it. You need 7 or 9 damage to all if you want to fight the Priestess at the beginning of loop 3. She is probably going to take about 800 of your HP. Damage to all also works well against the Hunter, because you have to chew through the health of the entire pack about twice. And chewing is great when you are a vampire. Just 9% of vampirism netted me 100 HP in my fight against the Hunter, so you can imagine how beneficial the vampirism is. I really advise to stack a lot of it. People often get mad when they are sniped by a hound coming out of the astral plane at the end of the fight, but it is really the easier version of this fight. The hard one is when the hunter stays the last, and the easy version is unlocked by having a lot of attack speed. Finally, Omega, an absolute tank with a lot of HP and armor. A ticking time bomb that is going to delete your stats in order from the bottom to the topmost one. And once he gets to the plus max HP stat, you are probably screwed. The straightforward way to fight him is to go for the pure damage and splash in all the other stats to give yourself more time. Omega is the most skill-intensive fight, and I'm doing a little trick once again. With combat speed, you can slow down or speed up day progression, but with tabbing out you can stop the day progression entirely during the boss spawn animation. I spent a lot of time to check the position of the day progression slider, and I saw that with it, my morning heal is going to happen when my HP per day stat is likely going to be deleted. So I really had to slow down the day progression for this one, and I start equipping my combat gear. The mace I should have equipped earlier in the previous fight, because that harpies, they really gave me a nice beating. It is a bit of a shame that I didn't get to showcase the greater trick, because if you start the fight in the morning, so to say, you can really choose the correct number of your total stats, correct combat speed, and tab out at the precise moment. so that when Omega deletes your plus max HP stat, your next morning heal comes. With just the base HP at this point, it's going to be a full heal, and after 2 more of his attacks, he's going to return the max HP stat, and your percentage of HP will stay the same. So basically you can make the final boss heal you for half of your maximum HP. And it is done indeed. Now time for some post-mortem. I have beaten the challenge, obviously. I did not get any golden cards, I haven't fought any prime matters. So it was just the good old rushing of the progression and some decent items. Analysis tells me that I've got great luck with card drops, at least in the first 2 loops where it mattered the most. Enemies dropped significantly more cards than the expected number. Now I'm showing the stats, and you'll see that I've spent way more time than I should have. I've spent a lot of time playing a not optimal strat because I was afraid of the priestess. Is it possible to beat the game without chronos or temporal beacons just with the starter deck? I think it is, but it would require titanic effort. And with this, I am out.